Recently I've been scrolling around on Beatport, and in the Beatport charts, in the Techno charts, I found the tune Lazuli by Mha Iri, and I think it's a really great tune. It's a unique tune because it really stands out from the rest and the sound that is dominating there. So I thought, why not recreate this sound as close as possible. Of course, I don't have the original choir samples, but I managed to recreate the entire atmosphere very closely, only with samples from Splice. And yeah, check out this video to see how I did it. So first of all, I bought the track from Beatport in WAV, and then I've imported it to Ableton. So I'm working with Ableton. You can use any DAW you want. They all work the same. Use the one that works good for you. Okay, and what I did then, you see here, the first track is my reference track, and here I made already some markers for the different parts. So you see that every 4 bars something changes. That makes the track really interesting. Of course, I also checked the tempo. It's 140 and the scale is G minor. So really basic stuff. G minor is my favorite scale to work in. It's not too low, so it also pushes pretty good through cheap speakers. And in the club you have enough punch in your stomach from the G as a bass. So that's a really great thing. G, F sharp and F that's basically the best scales to produce techno music. The breakdown is basically the point where you want to start working on the track, because everything else is pretty basic stuff. I will show you in a minute. It's really easy to do, but the breakdown is where the song gets interesting and really stands out, because you have these choirs. It's an aesthetic borrowed from psytrance, so you have this really trippy sound, which I think is genius and very different to what you hear on the Beatport charts lately. So it breaks down completely here. Pretty sudden, just introduced by a low cut. It's really easy to replicate. And then you go into the main break, where the choir is introduced. And then you have a very simple effect. It's so 2015, I love it. And then a really simple triplet drop. So how did I do it? Let's scroll down. You see here I always have my low end in yellow, I have my drums in blue, but that's just my color coding, so I know what I'm doing. I have my samples in red, my synths in green, and my effects in white. So let's look into the choir, because that's where we start. So I first of all made an 8th choir out of this thing here. And that's where I make the effect of the 8ths that's going through the entire song from the beginning. You hear it in the original. So that's not the original, that's me. So that's really simple. I just took a random loop. This one is in F minor. I just pitched it up 2 semitones to fit it to G. And here you go. Then I have like a shout. Alone it sounds really stupid, but in the context it gets much more interesting. Maybe let's listen to the entire breakdown in the original and then what I did. So it's the 8th choir that we have here, that I've generated just with a choir sample, and I always played in 8 notes with a MIDI file, you can see here. Basic stuff. And I also had a piano underneath it that plays a little background melody. For this I've used the Spitfire Audio tape piano, which is free. You can get it for free. And it's perfect for that use. And then I have some choirs I've acquired in Splice, and let's listen to the main break. So the leading chant is this one. If you want to recreate it completely, you will realize that it's not really in sync, so you have to warp a little bit around to get it completely in sync with the bars, but then it's a really nice choir, a really nice chant. I've already got the feedback from a friend that that I should tune it because it's a little off here, but I think it's really great and I don't want to change it. You see, I have a background choir, which is also just a sample from Splice, but it was also not easy to get it into the bars, so I have just used it in a simpler and then fired at the right point in time each individual slice, as you can see here. So here we go, and we are in time, because it was nearly impossible to get this choir sample really in time, for me at least. So that's how I did it. It's a really simple trick. You can always use load it into simpler. Make sure you have some fade in and fade out time, so it's not as clicky. And yeah, what else? We have a choir left and right. Yeah, that's a sample I just got like that. It's in the root tone, so it's in G, and it goes from left to right. It makes up another little space, and so it gets more interesting all in all, and that's what the entire break sounds like with the piano and all the choir samples. We have some effects here. And that's basically it. Okay, apart from the choir, we have some drums. We have some drum loop that comes up and opens up. This is really just a loop I've built myself and printed it out. It's really simple. I've printed out some of my drums and then I filtered them. That's what Mha Iri obviously did as well, so I just rebuilt that thing. And then we have some low end, we have some bass coming in for the break, and we have some effects, and that's basically it. We have some sweeps, we have some sweeps, we have some impacts, and that's basically it. It's a really simple thing, and that's what the entire thing sounds from the main break. Drums coming in, filtered drums. So you can see what happens here. Filter opens up. And some washout. And now a low cut filter opens up. Done. And then I just cut the triplets very simply here. So maybe that's a good point to start looking into our low end and the drums, which is honestly not that complicated. At first sight I wasn't sure if in the original it was just a bass tone which goes on continuously as soon as it comes in, because it's so fast and it's so long, and it's maybe just interrupted through a sidechain compressor. But then I've turned down the tempo so much, down to 80 or 85 BPM, and because I have a WAV file, it works. And then when it was so slow, I heard, oh no, it's a rhythmical bass, but I don't hear it anymore, to be honest. Not on my headphones, also not on my speakers. So I tried to make it a little better, and I think I succeeded. So let's go to the beginning of the song where it says micro loop, and listen to what the original sounds like. Okay, so what we hear is we have some kind of bass drum, we have a sub bass, we have some bass on top of the sub bass, which goes on in eighths, and then we have something, some bass stabs. We have the choir in the eighth pattern that goes through the entire song. That's what I showed before, and yeah, that's basically it. Some hi-hats, basic stuff. So how did I do it with the low end? I think that's always the question. If you nail your low end, you have half of your song ready. So let's listen to my low end. What have I done here? I've used a kick drum by the Producer School, which I like very much. I think they have great samples. I've bought their pack, and then I've made a loop because I like to time my kick samples very tightly together with the bass, and you see here it ends exactly where the sub bass starts. And if you are pedantic like me and keep doing it like this, you won't have any sub mud. And sub mud is always what kills your song when you listen to it in the club or in the car, and it just sounds like so make sure your kick and your sub bass don't interfere, and the bass that sits on top over here has a low cut. So you see I've cut it up to 126 Hertz. In this case, that's where it should sit. That's where it doesn't interfere with the sub bass and the kick too much, but still has a little bassy sound. And all the low end belongs to the kick, which I also cut here at 25 Hertz, as you see, because the low sub low is sometimes also a little dirty. This sample was a little dirty, no offense, still great samples, but it was a little dirty, and I like to keep my low end very clean. So kick solo. See, nothing is really happening here except for a kick going through. And for the sub bass, I've used Serum, and I used basic shapes, and I used a triangle wave and a low cut filter, and then I used drive. So if you listen to it without the filter, it sounds like this. You don't hear a lot. And then I start my filter, and through the drive you see that it has a lot more overtones, and it gets audible also on small speakers. And of course you're listening to that tutorial on your headphones and not on your phone, so you can hear it. On your phone you won't hear a difference at all. Then I also added some distortion, and that's it. Bass, always keep it very simple. If you watch Zen World's tutorials, that's what he basically says. Bass is always simple, and then just distort it, and then it gets audible. What else did I do? I have an LFO tool here. Even if you see that everything is fine, I want to make sure that everything is really fine. So I make sure that nothing gets through except for the time when I want to get it through. And I've set the LFO tool. I use the same LFO tool on my kick here. You see I've set the volume to -100. That means that it's completely inverted. And so there is no chance on earth that kick and sub will ever mix. For both of those, I've routed them to a group and put them into the glue compressor. where I applied a little bit of parallel compression, dry wet to 75, and here I had some resonance at 146 Hertz, which I cut out, but it was very slight, and I think now it sounds good. I always recommend to use headphones when you're mixing your sub and low end, because nobody of us has a perfect studio and we have all rooms which may mix up our bass, so always use good headphones to mix your sub and low end as well. What did I use here? I've used a preset, a Serum preset, which I liked very much, and I've just modified it slightly. I made it a little shorter. Where is it coming from? It's from the producer school as well. And yeah, I really like that. I really like that preset. Why did I choose that? Because it's a little wider and it has a lot of overtones, so it works without the sub layer. And it's noisy as well, so that's really a great sound. With chorus, it's a little wider. They also had some delay and reverb on it, so it's a quite stereo-ish sound. Then I've added some Saturn on it, just to distort it a little bit. And then you see here my LFO tool as a sidechain. It's not really for the kick to cut through, it's more for the effect, for the pumping effect, which I like a lot. And then finally I've cleaned it up with an EQ. So that's basically it, and everything just runs into my low-end group. I've used some drum bass on the group just to give it a little more drive and a little more crunch. Very simple stuff. Let's have a look at the drums. For the drums, it's really simple. Again, this is the original. We hear an open hi-hat. In my case, I've used it a little more filtered, a little more noisy, because I wanted to have the ride a little more sticking out. So the ride should be the very light, very crisp sound, and the head should be a little more damped, a little more mushy. So that was just my personal taste. I've added a little bit of ping pong delay on it, and yeah. That's basically it. Nothing special. Next we have some closed heads. Again, the same thing. I've applied the same technique. I think I even used the same sample. No, I've used another one from Audio React this time. Also great samples. Definitely check out his YouTube channel. I think he's the most underrated producer channel out there. He's crazy, this French guy. He's really good. And then we have the ride. So let's listen to all of them together. Yeah. And for the right, you can see that I've used some chorus ensemble, which I switched off again. I can also delete it because I didn't like the effect. I've tried it. And I've used some auto pan just to pan it left and right. And then again, the equalizer I've just copied from before. And that's what the entire thing sounds like. And that's basically everything drum-wise that's happening in the original. It's very simple. I have added something that's not in the original, or at least not audible to me, and that is a pad. It's filtered down here. Let's listen to it here. That's just my taste. I like that. And then we have a lot of synth steps that are either simply dropped into it as a wave, or I've used it simpler to play them, pitch them, and yeah, that's what my synths sound like. It's basically nothing special. Right now, I've realized that on many of my old production, I've used way too much reverb and delay. So for now, I try to keep it as simple as possible and use my return channels, because I always trick myself with a great impression of the song and maybe you can relate. Here may be interesting, I've built a riser myself. How did I do it? Let's listen to it. I've built it in Serum. First of all, we have this LFO, which is simply opening up. What is this modulating? It's modulating my main synth, which is this one. Then I have some FM, so I'm modulating this oscillator A with my oscillator B, and the LFO defines on how much. So the longer it goes, the more it gets modulated and the more it gets. Then I have some noise, which is also opened up by this LFO, and also the pitch is altered upwards through this LFO. So this one is just defining the opening of the sound. And then I have a second LFO, and this one goes like a wobble, and it defines the rhythmic aspect of the track. And I have automated the rate. So as you can see, the rate is at a fourth triplet at the beginning, and now it's an eighth. So it changes through time, which I have automated in my DAW. And this LFO is basically working on my cutoff, so it opens and closes the sound. You could also use this LFO to modulate your drive or the mix of your distortion to make it even more interesting. I've used a little bit of distortion, which is modulated also by the first LFO, so the longer the sound goes on, the more it gets distorted. The chorus is opened up, the reverb is opened up, and also my filter cutoff and mix go up in time as the sound progresses. Then I have added some low cut, some OTT just to make it more present, and then I've used the Audio React modernizer. As I said, go on his YouTube channel. He made a modernizer, which is basically a vocoder. It's a very well-known trick to use a vocoder to make your sound pop a little more, to make it a little more aggressive, and then some washout and some automated LFO tool as a ducking effect, which comes in shortly before the end. I hope you liked it. If you stuck around until now, please consider to like and subscribe this video, and share a comment if you have an idea on how to improve, or if you like this video. Okay? If you enjoy this song, you can buy it on my Bandcamp. The link is up here. So now let's listen to the final result from the breakdown.